Started a series last week called Something Greater, and we're going to look at a time now where Jesus talks about this idea of being great, and I'll get into that in just a moment, but he says greatness really needs to start in the family, spiritually speaking in our context today, but that's where it's got to start, and I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment. But again, we started the series last week called Something Greater because all of us want to be great. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, there's something inside of each of us that says, I want to be great. I want to leave a mark on this world. I want to make a difference. I want to have a lasting impact. I long for greatness. And if that's you, and again, I think it's true of all of us, that's okay. You shouldn't feel bad about that or weird about that or feel like, oh, that shouldn't be right. And no, I think that's given to you by God. I think God put something inside each of us that says, yeah, I was destined, I was made for greatness. But the key is knowing what true greatness is. In fact, Jesus defined it for his followers in one instance one day when he was talking to them. He said, let me tell you what greatness really is. You want to be great? Great. But you need to understand what it is, because the world will tell you greatness is a lot of different things that Jesus didn't necessarily say was true. The world will tell you, you know what, to be great means to have gobs and gobs and gobs of money. The Bible doesn't say there's anything wrong with having lots of money, but that's not greatness. The world will say to be great is to build something huge, right? A product or a company, or maybe, my line of work, a church or whatever it is. And if you can do that, that's greatness. Again, wonderful to do that in whatever arena that you find yourself in. Awesome. But that's not what Jesus said is true greatness. The world will tell us that greatness is being the bigwig, the one in charge, the one that everyone else looks to and says, yeah, follow them and listen to what they say and, don't screw up or don't tick them off, because if you do, you're going to be out of job or you're going to be out, influence, or your name will get smeared or whatever. But just this idea of, to be great is to be kind of the one that everyone looks up to, everyone follows, everyone, kind of makes a big deal of. To be famous, to be adored. Okay, in and of itself, that's even fine too. But that's not what Jesus said is greatness. Jesus defined it this way, and he defined it in the context of some of his disciples expressing their desire to be great. In fact, they said, Jesus, when you are king and you stand in your glory and kind of everyone else realizes now that you're the guy, you're the king of it all, right? We want to be right by your side in the literal, physical sense. One of us on your left, one of us on your right. Two of his disciples came and said that to him one time. And what's amazing about this story, and if you want to listen to the whole talk, we went through it last week. You could listen online. I won't go into all of it now. But what's amazing about the story is Jesus doesn't knock him over the side of the head and says, how dare you be so conceited and arrogant that you would want that and selfish. He doesn't do that, because I think he knows, I understand why you want to be great. I put that in every human heart to want to be great. But let me tell you what true greatness is. I don't think you understand what it truly means to be great. And until you and I follow Jesus' model for greatness, that longing inside of us will never be fulfilled. That longing to be great, to really make a difference, it will never be fulfilled. So what did Jesus say true greatness was? He said this: whoever wants to become great, he's going to be clear as crystal here. There's no beating around the bush. Whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. The world says greatness is found in these things. And again, in and of themselves, all those things are fine. You can approach them in a wrong way, you can approach them in a right way, great. True greatness is this. You want to be great, and I know you do. You must be a servant. Right there. Jesus defines it for us. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. The big idea last week when we started this series was that true greatness is found in living a life of service to others. In other words, being like Jesus himself. That's what Jesus said. You want to be like me, and that's what it means to be a Christian. It's not to agree to a set of doctrines. It's not to, come to church every Sunday or give a certain amount of money or whatever. No. To be a Christian, according to Jesus, is to actually be like him. To be a disciple of Christ is just to be a little Christ, to be a little form of Jesus on earth, to take it quite literally. And Jesus, that's what it means to know me, to be a Christian, to follow me, is to be like me. And you want to know what I'm like? You want to know what I do? I serve. I meet other people's needs. I care for them. I do things that bring encouragement into other people's lives, things that help them grow in their faith. I help others get to a better, healthier place in life. That's true greatness. And we all want to be great. And as Jesus continued to do life with his disciples and head towards the cross, the ultimate example of serving others, which would make it the ultimate example of greatness, he puts more definition to this idea of being a servant, including who specifically we ought to serve. Because although Jesus, in the passage we looked at last week in Mark 10, tells us very clearly, you should be a servant of all. You want to be like me? That should be the whole trajectory of your life, is to say, how do I serve others? Apparently, it's important to God that certain people take priority over others. Now, it may sound a little weird, like, wait a second, I thought we were talking about Jesus here. That doesn't sound right. Well, it makes sense when you start to understand it. We'll talk about it here in a little bit more, though. But apparently that if we neglect a certain group of people while serving other types of people, we've missed God's heart on this whole serving thing. Some of our other serving could be in vain if we never start in a certain place Jesus says to start. And the other New Testament writers are going to back him up on this. As you continue to study the New Testament, I encourage you to do so. Read the Bible for yourself and dig through it and kind of go through not only the stories of Jesus, the four Gospels, but go through some of the letters of the first followers of Christ and all that. You'll see the other writers echo these sentiments, that there's a place where this whole serving thing needs to start. And Jesus, before any of those other guys ever get to this point, he makes it himself. He makes it in a story that you're probably familiar with. If you've grown up in church or been around church or went to Sunday school as a kid or whatever, you definitely know this story. But I find most people actually know this story because it's just one of those Bible stories that our culture has kind of grabbed onto in various ways and used as a cliche and whatnot. And that's fine. I think that's great, actually. So it's probably a story you're familiar with. But what I find is we could hear the story, we can read the story, and then be like, been there, done that. Got it. And miss what Jesus is really trying to tell us through his words. Specifically this morning, what he's really trying to tell us about being a servant and what the heart behind all of it is. Now, here's the context. And again, some of you, if you know the story, you already know this, you've heard this. But for those of you who don't, let me just quickly give you the context. Jesus is about to go to the cross, and he's going to share a meal with his 12 closest followers, his 12 disciples, in an upper room. And it's called the Passover meal. That was the Jewish name for this particular meal, and there's a whole incredible history beyond that. And if you're not familiar with that, do a little more homework. The Bible's full of good stuff, you guys. Go back to the Old Testament, read the book of Exodus. Good stuff. But he's going to share this Passover meal with his followers. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, and these guys, trust me, they did not see this coming, he gets down and washes their feet. Now, again, some of you are like, oh yeah, I grew up in Sunday school, and I've been to church before. I've heard that story. But if you have never heard this story, you have to realize that's a huge thing. That Jesus, right, seen as a rabbi, seen as a religious leader, seen as someone who is worthy to follow, it gets down and just starts washing these dudes' feet. And it totally blew him away. And in the context of doing so, he starts to explain some things that up to this point they probably weren't really ready to hear, but now's the time, because he's so close to going to the cross now and dying for their sins. And he starts to explain to them, this is who I am. This is why I've really come. This is what it's going to mean to know me and to live for me and have a relationship with me. And again, I don't have time to get into all that this morning either. Even all of that isn't necessarily the point, but go and read that as well. That's in John chapter 13, and at the beginning of John chapter 13, the first part of the section we're going to look at here in just a moment. So he does all this. He washes their feet. He tells them these amazing, mind-blowing truths. And then we get to this part in the story where I think he really reveals to them, this is why I told you. This is the heart behind this whole serve others thing. So let's look at it together. This is the kind of the second half of the story, all right? Again, what I just described comes before this earlier on in John chapter 13. But in verse 12, it says this: when he had finished washing their feet, what I just described to you, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Now, just point of clarification, if you're new to church in the Bible, which is great, I'm happy that you're here if that's the case. Jesus wasn't naked while he was washing these guys' feet, all right? Because you could read that and be like, whoa, time out, this weird movie on HBO or something. No, it's not the case. There, in biblical times, there was known what was the outer clothes and sort of the underwear, inner clothes, but it wasn't like it was appropriate, okay? I just want to make sure you're like, kind of church is this? Is that really in the Bible? When he'd finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. But then he asked them this question. This is very important. Do you understand what I have done for you? Do you understand what I have done for you? In other words, you know what? I have been teaching you guys about being a servant for a long time. I've been teaching you about what it means to really know me, what it means to be like me. And then I've just given you this incredible example. And it could have been so easy for the disciples, as I'm afraid it'll be so easy for some of us this morning who grew up in church and have heard this story to be like, yeah, great, well, the whole washing the feet thing, of course, that's Jesus and that's just part of the deal, blah, blah, blah. And I think Jesus says to you and I, just like he said to his disciples, do you understand? Don't let the gravity of this just fly by your face here. Do you understand what I have just done for you? This was a big, big moment for the disciples. Keep going. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. But now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I've set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Next verse. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Once again, we see in the most critical of opportunities, in the perfect teaching moments, in the most monumental transitions for his disciples, Jesus makes it a priority to teach them what it truly means to be like him, what it really means to be mature in your faith, what it really means to be spiritual. And it's to be a servant of others. Oh, we define spirituality and being mature, and those are the super class 4 Christians and all that kind of stuff in so many different weird ways that Jesus never did. Jesus said, you want to go the distance? You want to be mature in your faith? You want to grow spiritually? Become a servant of others. But whether you've heard the Jesus washed his disciples' feet story a million times, or again, it's maybe totally new to you, it's easy to miss a few aspects of this story, again, that I think really reveal the heart behind this truth. The first one is this, and it's what we've already been touching on up to this point. Being like Jesus by serving others always starts within God's family. Always starts in the family. Sometimes our families, right, don't hold back on me this morning, are the hardest to love. Sometimes our family members are the hardest ones to serve. God knows this. That's why God says, start within your family. When I was growing up, I have 2 older brothers. I was having this discussion with someone before, I think at the first service, saying, I was actually the runt of the litter. What? You're like 6'2", you're a big dude? Trust me, I was the runt. And I took a lot of abuse growing up at the hands of my brothers. And I went through one season of life where one of my older brothers, who was totally outweighed me at the time, he was like 4 years older, just thought it would be fun to pin me underneath a chair. I've told this story before, some of you know what's coming. And sit on top of the chair and then drop loogies out of his mouth and then just mess with me psychologically. Sometimes they drop, sometimes they wouldn't. Of course, I would never know. I think sometimes they drop because he couldn't pull it back in fast enough and it was a mistake. Who knows? Families are tough. Families can be weird. Families can be tricky. Sometimes our family members are the hardest to love. Sometimes our families are the hardest to serve. The disciples were a messed up spiritual family. They argued. They jockeyed for position within the group. One of them was even a thief. I mean, just flat out just went around taking the money from the group, right? And Jesus knew it. He wasn't blind to it, but I mean, they were messed up. And Jesus was being real clear. You have to serve one another. That goofy uncle, that messed up brother, that sister that drives you crazy, that mom that you just can't, you serve one another. Just like taking care of your own family, which is always what's most important, right? The same is true with our spiritual family, with God's family. Our heart for serving is tested the most, is revealed the most when we serve those within the family. And that's why Jesus said, he wasn't out in a big crowd. He wasn't out on a missionary field. He wasn't doing some kind of great Christian work somewhere. He was with the family, the first group of people that had bonded together and said, yep, we believe in Jesus. He's the guy. We're going to follow him. He's going to be the center of our life. In other words, the first church. And he said, serve one another. Another reality of serving others we begin to realize, I think, from this story is that chances are serving others will be inconvenient. It'll be messy. And at times, it's even going to feel like it's beneath you. Just the way Jesus wants it. Think of the context in which Jesus commands his disciples to serve each other. Washing feet. Now, back in that day, washing feet wasn't weird. It was actually very customary. All right, some of you may know this if you studied your Bible. You've heard messages on this before, but it was a customary thing to do. Most people got their feet washed, but as you can imagine, it wasn't a popular thing to do. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't a job that you're like, oh, are you applying for the foot washing job? Sweet. Can you get me in? Do you know someone in that department? I mean, no one wanted the job, even though it was very customary, very normal to do so. It was only the lowliest servants would wash the feet of others. And there were a few reasons for that. It wasn't like randomly, well, let's just make this the really bad job and everyone wants to, work at Microsoft or be a teacher or what. There was reasons why no one wanted to wash each other's feet. Now, they're probably pretty obvious, right? First, it was extremely inconvenient. You had to go through this whole rigmarole. Again, take off the outer clothes. Doesn't mean you were naked underneath, but take off your outer clothes and get the thing of water and get down on your knees. And it's not like you're going to be checking your email at the same time while you're sitting in your cushy desk chair or whatever. I mean, it was inconvenient. It was a major distraction in one's life to have to wash others' feet. It took time and effort. It was inconvenient. Also, it was nasty. I mean, seriously, it was gross. These people walked around in sandals all day long, right? And they weren't wearing socks with them, right? They weren't German. So, I mean, sorry. I got more laughs in this service than the last one. Nothing against German people. My heritage is German. They walked around in sandals, open-toed, through dirt and trash and muck and animal stuff, just on the ground. That's just what they did. They didn't know any better. That's just how life worked. And as a result, your feet got really nasty. That's why it was customary to have foot washers, because you had to wash your feet. I mean, it was for health reasons, right? Just for making your home livable. You couldn't just go without having your feet washed. So it was really, really gross. It was messy. And as a result, most people thought it was beneath them. Most people looked at the role of washing others' feet and said, not me. Somebody else's job. Somebody else has the time, somebody else has the acumen for that, somebody else has the skills for that, somebody else has the esteem for that, whatever, but not me. That would be beneath me. It was inconvenient. It was messy. And at times it seemed beneath people. So what was Jesus teaching them when he got down and did that job? It's not beneath me. It's not beneath me. I'm the guy you all are totally banking on will be the king, be like the most powerful person, be the person that everyone follows and bows down to. And it is not beneath me. If you really know me as Lord, then you should be like me. And guess what I do? I serve others. I get down in the mess, in the nastiness, in the inconvenience, and I serve. That's what it means to be great. Remember, what does he say? No servant is greater than his master. You want to be like me? You want to be a Christian? Again, forget all the definitions and the political stuff and all the cultural stuff about Christianity. Jesus is laying out real clearly for us. To be a Christian is to be like Jesus. It's to walk like he walked. And no servant is greater than his master. In other words, don't ever think you're too busy to serve the needs of others. Don't ever think that it's someone else's job to be a servant, or that in some way it's beneath you. Because Jesus said, it's my number one priority. I'm just going to be real with you. That's why I came. That's why I came to earth in the form of a man, was to serve. That's the whole point. And finally, and Jesus isn't even subtle about this part, he just tells them flat out, it's at the end of the passage there. Jesus said it, you'll be blessed when you choose to be a blessing. Jesus' own words, right? If you want to argue this point, take it up with him. He just flat out, you want to be blessed in life? Because what? We all want to be blessed. We all pray those prayers. God bless me. God help me. And that's great. I encourage you to pray that way. Help me grow in my faith. Help me be a good Christian. Help me give and share and all, blah, 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 whatever it is, right? God bless my life. Jesus said it. You want to be blessed? Be a blessing. You want to experience that new life full of joy and peace and contentment that I always talk about, referring to Jesus, or that you see in others who follow Jesus? You do want that too? Bless others. Simple as that. It comes when we serve others, beginning with those in the family, right around us in church. Be a blessing. I struggled as, I'm sure, well, I hope many of you as parents struggled with this as well. When my kids were starting to get to the age where they could start doing chores around the house, it was really hard for me in a lot of areas of work and jobs and chores and whatnot to just have them do it. And it wasn't because we didn't believe in hard work or we coddled our kids or, we're very much an investment, not entitlement type of family. And so that wasn't the reason. But nonetheless, I still really struggled. I didn't want to do that in many cases. Okay, here's your job and I need you to do this and okay, go to it. Now, for those of you who struggled the same way as I did, again, I hope some of you did, why? Why do we struggle with that? Because they'll do it wrong. Right? Let's be real. Because it's going to be more work to train them. It's going to be more work to redo it. It's going to be more work to step in and go through the mess and the muck and all this stuff. And oh gosh, you did it wrong again. I don't know if you know this, but there's only one person on this planet that knows how to properly load a dishwasher, and it's me. Okay? I've never met anyone else who gets it, who understands it. And my kids certainly didn't know how to do it, right? Oh, sure, Dad, I'll put it here. Da, da, da. Ah! My gosh, who are you? What family did you come? I mean, seriously, there's a way, and I can increase efficiency and effectiveness in a dishwasher by 30 to 40%. Tests have proven this. When I load it and no one else gets it. And it was so hard for me to have my kid, okay, all seriousness, here was the turning point for me. And my wife probably told me this a million times, but I'm a dude, so I had to come to the conclusion by myself, right? Yeah. She'd been telling me this for a long, long time. But in all seriousness, I'm not trying to be corny when I say this. I realized I was robbing them of the blessing of work. As much as I try to keep controlling it and you do it wrong, and I just have to redo it anyway, so never mind, let me just do it. Da, da, da. Finally, I realized I am robbing them of the blessing to grow in responsibility, to learn hard work, to understand that a family should be about investing and not entitlement and taking and what do I get out of it. I was robbing them of that blessing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anyone in this church needs to learn those types of lessons. But the reason we're challenging you to do something greater this year by taking the next step in your serving, whatever that step may be, it's going to be different for all of us. Just as Jesus did some 2,000 years ago. He challenged his followers the exact same way. Hey, take your next step in being a servant. The reason we're doing that is because we believe with all our heart, you will be blessed if you do. We know you will grow spiritually more than ever when you choose to serve. It's the pinnacle of spiritual growth. Jesus said it himself. That's where you and I become like him. And guys, I said this last week, and I really mean this. There won't be ever a season as a church, and every church goes through this. Church is much bigger than us, church is much smaller than us, everything in between won't matter. Every church will go through this. There won't be a single season in the life of the church where you don't need more people to get involved. It's not why we're doing this series. When we looked at this new year of ministry and said, God, what is it that we want to focus on more than anything else so the people of I-90, including us as leaders, grow spiritually? And it was so clear. Honestly, we didn't have to pray about it. It's there in the Bible. Challenge them to serve. Challenge them to take Jesus seriously. And look, he just says it. When you do these things, you'll be blessed. You'll grow closer to me. And reflecting again on all this past week, again, these very words, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. It made me wonder, why do people at I-90 serve? Because a lot of you do. We have a great percentage of people serving at I-90 already. In fact, I'd venture to guess, because I've read all the church growth books and I go to conferences and all this kind of stuff, It's probably better than your average church in terms of the number of people who serve regularly here at this church, which is awesome. It's really, really cool. But I started to ask, well, why? Why? We've never done a series like this before. Never put out this kind of challenge as directly as we have. Why is that happening? And the responses I got is I just randomly, it wasn't scientific and I didn't do some big elaborate poll. I just started emailing people I thought of. Hey, why do you serve? Tell me where you serve and then tell me why you serve. The responses I got were amazing. Some of them made me laugh. Some of them made me start to tear up a little bit. Some of them were just like, wow, God, you're awesome. I mean, all glory to you. That's really, really incredible. I thought I just want to share some of these with you here this morning. And imagine this. Almost every single response I got in some way or another expressed the fact that I'm blessed as I bless. In some words, some form of the words or another, almost every single person concluded, you know what, here's really why I serve. I know I'm supposed to, and I know it's the right thing to do, and I know God says to do it. I'm so blessed because I serve. One woman even wrote me, gosh, this is going to sound so selfish, Dave. I'm sorry, but you know what? I get so much out of serving. That's why I do it. And I was like, you know what? Jesus said that would be the case. You're okay. That's cool. So let me just read some of these to you. Again, I got dozens back, and I just picked out a few that I thought would be fun to share. So Lisa, who serves by leading small groups in the elementary and preschool area, said this: I grew up in a church that was no fun for kids. Anyone else grow up in that church? I was in that church. No offense to them, but anyway. And I love going in there on Sundays and showing the kids that learning about Jesus is fun and exciting. I serve because I love being with the kiddos. I feel closest, don't miss this. I feel closest to the Lord when I am with children, and I find I learn so much more when teaching about Him. It is one of the favorite days of my week. I'm going to pause for a moment because I called Crystal Garvin, our nursery director. I called her out in the first service because she wrote me an email too. I threw one out to her. And she's always been like, I don't want to ever get paid for this job. I just want to be a volunteer as I oversee the nursery ministry. And she wrote me an email that was really moving, really powerful. But at the end, she says, and Dave, I just got to be real with you. I learned so much more from teaching these kids these Bible stories than any sermon you ever give. Yeah, I'm glad you thought that was funny. I didn't find it very funny. No, actually, it was awesome. It made me very happy because that's the idea. That's what Jesus said. You'll be blessed when you are a blessing. Let me finish Lisa's response here because the rest of this is really cool. My very favorite part about serving in the children's area is that I love the opportunity to make each and every child who comes to our church feel loved, seen, and special. And oh, what joy on their faces when you tell them one simple truth. Hey, guess what, so-and-so? Jesus loves you, and we are so glad you are here. Isn't that cool? Let me read you a couple others. Greg, who serves on the Connection team, said, I serve on the Connections team because I like to connect with people while serving the Lord. Short, simple, sweet, but how true, right? As I know I'm serving God while I get to connect with people, as I greet them, as I pass out programs, as I serve coffee, whatever. Stacy, who also serves on the Connections team, wrote me this: serving at I-90 has really given our family a greater sense of purpose and has helped us to raise our children to have servant hearts. Serving has also helped us feel so much closer to the people we attend church with. It really makes us feel like we have a great, big, loving family and is very, very rich, and we feel incredibly blessed to have the opportunity to serve alongside such amazing people. Aaron, who serves with youth, said this: my heart to work with teens came out of my own experience as a teenager. Looking back, I realized how badly I needed someone to really show up for me and how negatively impacted me that I didn't have that. Unfortunately, I think this is more and more the norm than we realize, and as a result, we have so many kids slipping through the cracks. Teenagers need someone to take the time to really know them and earn their trust and respect so they feel safe. We probably have 4 or 5 people like this, a couple warehouses down right now, running around with 30 teenagers trying to do that very thing, and it's so true. Teenagers need someone to take the time to really know them and earn, someone who will get involved even if it's uncomfortable. Someone to have the hard conversations that no one wants to have, but every teenager needs to have. Someone to care enough to put their own fear and discomfort aside and get down in the trenches of adolescence with them and help lead them through, Someone to advocate for them and teach them how to advocate for themselves. Most importantly, someone to show them who Jesus really is and point them toward Him and Him alone. She needs to write a book. That's awesome. That's right on the money. Michelle, who serves on the Connections team, wrote me saying, I like arriving to church early and being able to see everyone that walks through the door and at least saying hello to them, possibly more. It keeps me involved in the church community in a way that I never would be otherwise. Michelle, not to be confused with Michelle, who serves with babies and walkers, said this, simply put, I love children. And as a new member to the church, it was a great way to meet people. Keep that in mind. One of the best ways to connect with others is by serving. Jen, who serves with preschool, said, I started to serve to give back because so many in this church serve and bless our family. However, it has become so much more than that. I serve because Jesus calls us to, and our family receives so many blessings as we trust him with our time, energy, and commitments. I want to be an example to our kids on all of this so they can serve and receive the same blessings when they are older. Very cool. Last one here. Again, I got lots of them, but this last one I'll do for now. Sean, who serves in elementary, said this, I come alive when I get the opportunity to make the Bible come alive in the hearts of the kids. I come alive when I get to help the Bible come alive in the hearts of kids. That's awesome. I don't want to just go to church. I want to be the church, and it's fun. I liked how I added that on the end. Guys, working with kids, working with babies, working with teenagers, working with tech, sound, visual stuff, doing special projects during the week, being a greeter, making whatever it is, you'll be blessed when you bless. It's a promise. When Jesus says something like that straight out, you don't have to wonder, will that really come true? Oh, if I really make the effort, if I get on the schedule, oh man, seems like more of a distraction, more of an inconvenience. Trust me, you'll be blessed when you bless. In 1 Peter, it says this, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others. Again, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If you have a gift or a skill, and you all do, because you're a human being, you're made in God's image, God gave you something to share with others, whatever that thing may be. Maybe it doesn't fall into some of these things we just read examples of, but trust me, there's a home for it here at a church. Whatever it is, God says, use it. Use it to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Jesus, thanks for your incredible love. God, what else could we do with our life when we really get it? God, when we know that you've poured out so much grace upon us, when you literally sacrificed your life, Jesus, for us, what else could we do but to hand our lives right back to you? God, you deserve it all. And Father, for those among us this morning who are just asking the questions and kicking the tires and looking into you, I pray you'd meet them right where they're at and help them to see who you are, the grace and love and goodness that you have for them that's just bubbling over, that you want to pour over their heads. God, help them to know it is so real and so true and just waiting for them. God, for those of us who are on this journey of wanting to know you, wanting to be a Christian, but God, maybe we haven't taken those steps. God, maybe we haven't been really putting your words into action. God, help us to do it. Help us to take this challenge and do whatever we have to do to take our next step in serving this year, whatever that may be. Give us the courage to do it. Give us the faith to take Jesus at his word when he says we'll be blessed when we're a blessing. God, I pray this is a church, regardless of size, regardless of finances, regardless of any of those sorts of things, this would be a church where people are truly becoming like you, Jesus. That's the goal. You said it yourself. So, Father, let it be as a result of today. We pray all this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next Sunday.